What's up, sons? It's BlindRod with Tech once again, and welcome to Heaven being run on OS X. I'm here to show you guys how to do that on this Macintosh. Alright, jokes aside, guys, I'm going to be showing you guys how to install OS X on a Dell Precision T5500 with a GTX 1050 Ti installed. All audio's working, network's working, and everything's good to go. And as you can see, we're currently running Heaven benchmark on it right now. Well, it's complete, so you can see the score and all of that right there. The particular processor that we have in it is the Xeon X5675, and the memory is going to be 16 gigabytes of 1333 megahertz memory, DDR3. We have a solid state drive from Kingston in there. We actually have 4 of them. The thing is I used to have that in a RAID 0, and they're a little older, so they're like the 300 read and write, not the 500 read and write. So what I want to do is put those in RAID 0, and I'm going to put the other 3 in RAID 0, and then there's some fancy stuff we can do to move the OS off of the drive that we have it installed on onto the RAID 0, but that's going to be another video. Today, like I said, let's go ahead and show you how to do this. Disclaimer, don't do it at home. To build a Hackintosh, you're first going to need to have access to a Tosh. Whether that's a Macintosh or another Hackintosh, you're going to need OS X running on something to go ahead and grab the image. The first thing you're going to want to do is head on over to the App Store. You can click the little search button and head on over to the App Store, and then just look up the latest version. So for example, today we're going to be installing High Sierra. So if we just go ahead and do a quick search for that, we can go ahead and click and download, and then you'll have it here ready to go. Once that's complete, the next thing we need to do is find a handy dandy USB drive and plug it into the Tosh of your choice. So now that we have that plugged in, we are going to get ready to prep the drive. If we go up, we can do disk utility list. And at this point, you can go ahead and find your drives. So here you're going to see that we have the SSD, and then we're looking for this drive down here, the disk 2, and it's a 16 gigabyte drive. So we're just going to go up. I already have done this before, and we're going to partition the disk, this 2, and then make sure it's GPT, and then the size of the drive. In this case, we're going to go ahead and remove that and just put 15 in here because it's showing about 15.4. And then we can press enter. Now also keep in mind here that when you do this, it's going to wipe the drive. Now some people have in the past gone ahead and actually hopped into disk partition and done it. But what happens there is you end up getting an error later when you're using Unibeast, which is what we're going to be using to image this drive. So I recommend just going ahead and going into terminal and going this route. So now that we do that, we're going to press enter and wait for the format to complete. So now that the format is complete, you can see here that we have an empty USB drive, and we can move on to the next step. The next step is going to be downloading Unibeast. I'll go ahead and leave a link to the full text tutorial here for you guys to check out. Pretty much you can scroll down and then download the Unibeast installer. It'll download into a zip file, so you can just double click it and it should extract to the folder that you have it installed on. At this point, we can go ahead and run Unibeast. So now Unibeast is a pretty easy walkthrough. You're just going to click continue. Make sure you read the license information and so on, and then you can click agree. Of course, it's not going to let you go through with it if you don't agree. And then we're going to go ahead and select our USB drive that we want to install it on. We're going to select High Sierra, which it's already detected that we downloaded. And then we're going to select for the Dell T5500 Legacy Boot Mode because it does not have a UEFI mode. If you have a system that does support UEFI, please select that. Make sure you just check your motherboard manual, of course, to verify what is going on with that in your particular system. We can click continue, and now you can inject either ATI, aka AMD cards, drivers, or inject NVIDIA drivers. Now keep in mind, out of the box, the RX 460 and up and RX 560 and up are supported. Now, High Sierra also has a beta out currently that's supposed to support RX 450 and 550s out of the box, but in my testing it did not work, which is why in the B-roll you'll see me take it out and go ahead and put in a 1050 Ti. So down here at the bottom you'll see alternative NVIDIA graphics drivers. Now, we do have for High Sierra the graphics drivers for, of course, the Pascal generation cards here, and we're going to want to go ahead and pick them up. So we're going to go ahead and download, of course, the latest drivers and save them to file, and then we're going to place them on the USB that we end up imaging. So in this situation, since we are using a Pascal card, we're going to uncheck the inject NVIDIA drivers because it says for desktop systems with older NVIDIA graphics, and click continue. We are going to start our installation by clicking continue once again by confirming the 3 steps. Type in your password, administrator password or root password, and then it'll begin copying the files. This can take up to 15 minutes, so we'll be back when it's complete. Alright, so now that that's complete, you'll get an install succeeded and we can quit the Unibeast application. Now we need to prep the drive itself, so you can just go into Finder and select your install Mac OS portion. And then you'll see here you have an EFI backups and the install. It did rename your drive to install macOS High Sierra. Now, what we're going to want to grab and move over to that drive is going to be a couple things. So, if you have a NIC that's Intel or Realtek for your LAN drivers, you're not going to need some of this stuff. And in that case, all you're really going to need is this multi-beast portion right here. So if you extract this, you're just going to drag that folder extracted over to your install Mac OS portion, USB stick there. And then we are going to have something a little bit different. The KEXT utility is probably something you'll end up messing with if something isn't installing properly or you're not getting a driver. It's going to help you install drivers essentially. So I need this because I already know that the Dell T5500, if you guys are following it for that in particular, needs this BCM5722D driver. So I'm going to also grab this driver and place it over here. And that way I can get up and running and be ready to go out of the box and already have my NIC driver ready. And awesome. So that's pretty much it. The other thing I'm going to grab since I'm on Pascal is going to be the WebDriver package for the Pascal 10 series cards. We'll let that move over. And then our USB stick is prepped. So I'll see you guys over on the Dell T5500, aka the Terminator. So after you've plugged in the USB device to the T5500 in this case, we are going to get into the one-time boot device menu by tapping F12 on boot. This may be different depending on your motherboard manufacturer, so check your motherboard manual. Most commonly is going to be delete or F2 to get into here. Some Lenovo systems, for example, will be enter, so just go ahead and check that out. Now, we aren't actually going to boot yet. We are going to go ahead and head into system setup because there's some things in here that you guys need to see. So first, you're going to want to check your drive or your SATA settings and make sure that you have AHCI enabled. In this particular case, we have RAID Auto Detect AHCI, but we won't be using RAID. There's some software level RAIDs that you can do, and we'll go over that in a later video if you guys are interested in continuing that. Under video, we're going to check our primary video, and in this case we have option 2 selected. It really doesn't matter on the T5500 because other than selecting the one that you have your GPU slot plugged into, you aren't going to be changing anything like integrated graphics to discrete graphics. Now, if you are going through that on a different motherboard, be sure to go ahead and select the appropriate setting for whatever system you are currently using. The only other thing that we really need to address is virtualization. The virtualization will not work in OS X and can cause some other issues. So before you install, make sure you come into your BIOS and disable the Intel virtualization technology. And that being said, we're good to go and move on to starting the install. Okay, so once you have the BIOS settings complete, you can just go back into your one-time boot menu and boot from the actual USB drive. Now, as you'll see in here, we have a couple of options. We have the boot OS X install from the install Mac OS High Sierra. And then these are actual drives that I already have installed this on when I was playing around with the RX 550. But you should only have one option, possibly two, but most likely one, which will be this boot OS X install from the, drive that's named install Mac OS High Sierra. So we're going to go into this real quick. You should see this beautiful Apple logo pop up, and then it should take some time. I just wanted to put a reminder out there that you should stay patient because some of this will take a lot of time, and if you're already not a patient person, building a Hackintosh might not be for you. Alrighty, so now we're in. Personally, I have to go in here anyways into Disk Utility and reset some stuff, but in Disk Utility, what you're going to want to do is head on over to your internal drive, the primary drive you want to install it on, and click Erase. Here you want to name it High Sierra and then Mac Journaled, but for some reason this is doing APFS. Okay, so after doing a little bit of research, the APFS is going to be specifically for High Sierra, so this format should be fine. You probably won't see that, so if you want to format yours, I'll show you an example here. You'll just do Erase and select Mac OS Extended Journaled, and that'll be your initial one. This is because that drive, High Sierra, had already had High Sierra installed on it when I was testing with the RX 550. So I'm just going to erase all of these and make sure there's nothing like sticking around on any of them. And at this point, we can quit the Disk Utility and head into Install Mac OS. Read the license and agree. And then as you can see, we have the option to install on the High Sierra drive here. And we will just continue by clicking Install. Now it's time to wait once again. So hold on yet, you're not ready to go. Unlike Windows where you would be done with the install and ready to go, this is a little different. You're going to have to boot from your USB device one more time, actually a couple more times, before you're actually going to be able to go ahead and boot into the system without the USB device installed. This is because you're going to have to get that bootloader injected into your drive. So come back in here and select the USB device again, and then you will boot back into the bootloader. Alrighty, so once you're into the bootloader, you're going to want to select the third option. Make sure it reads Boot Mac OS Install from High Sierra. The other two options will not work in this case. Once again, get ready to wait. At this point, you should see the installing on High Sierra screen. And that means you're good to go. We are one step closer. Then after a reboot and going ahead and booting from the USB again and repeating the same process, you should be able to see the bar start to move. I don't know why this glitch is in there, other than I do know when you install High Sierra, even on an OS X device, it does go through some reboot processes. So just make sure you keep that state going. At any time, if it reboots, just make sure, don't freak out. Just make sure that you go back in and select the USB device, boot from it, and then once again, after that, select the boot from the High Sierra. Now, naming the drive High Sierra is recommended because that's how the actual software detects the drive. So make sure you do it in that fashion in this particular case, and then once it's installed, you can rename the drive. Okay, it's going to reboot one more time. Sometimes my capture card doesn't come back up, but you're just going to follow the exact same process of going ahead and getting into the BIOS menu and then continuing from there. And then you will once again select the boot Mac OS from High Sierra. And at this point, you are ready to start configuring your operating system. So you're going to select your country, your keyboard, your network. You're going to have to skip this if the driver wasn't pre-installed into the system. So for us, we're actually just going to say using DHCP and click continue, and it should give you an option that says could not configure network, and you can click continue there and it'll let you skip this portion. Now we're not going to transfer anything, of course. Get past the terms and conditions, and then you are ready to enter your name. Full name, Blind Run. Account name, Blind Run. And now you're setting up your new Hackintosh. Keyboard setup. I think I typed it in wrong, but hopefully everything goes okay. I typed X instead of Z on that first one. And now we're just going to want to hop into our Finder. And the primary thing you want to get resolved first is the multi-beast. And there's a quick setup that you can use. And with the quick startup, I'm going to use the legacy boot mode. And then I'm just going to build it out. What this is essentially going to do is it follows the Clover, follows or installs your Clover legacy boot mode, your drivers, which we aren't installing a whole bunch of drivers right now, your bootloaders, and then of course whatever system. You can reset this later for system definitions, and we can talk about that in a later video. For now, we're going to go with default settings and click agree. Type in the password you just created for your user, and then continue. Once installation is completed, you can go ahead and exit. We're going to install the rest of the options that we need, and that's going to specifically be the GPU driver, and then of course the driver for the internet. So this is what you need to get your NIC installed. You're going to run the KEXT utility. You'll have to type in your password that you've configured. And then essentially all you have to do is drag the file over to get it installed. Now it goes through some repairing permissions and so on, but for now I'm going to drag it over, and you can drag it over early, and then it's going to ask you for permissions. So it kind of gives you an idea of exactly when it's going to start installing it, because it's going to pop up and ask for permission again. I just drag it over prematurely. It's really up to you. This can take some time, and once again, you're going to be playing the waiting game here. For fun, I did want to go ahead and check out my About This Mac, and we are going to need those display drivers, because you see display 7 megabytes, so that's not correct. Hopefully we will get that resolved with this driver from NVIDIA here shortly. First, I'd rather get the internet installed in case this is incorrect, and that'll help us out. I'm going to open date and time preferences. It's probably not going to be able to sync up with anything right now, so I guess we'll wait. Okay, like I said, it's now ready to install our NIC drivers here, our Ethernet drivers. I'm just going to type in my password and it will complete, and when it's finished it'll say complete down here. This is just going to give us access to the interwebs, and then we'll be off to the races, and we can start troubleshooting the drivers for, of course, the GPU. Alrighty, so as you can see, it says all done. Have a nice day or night, depending on who you are. So we can quit out of this one. It usually doesn't start working right away. You do have to go through a reboot. But actually, I take that back. It looks like it did pull DHCP right away. And we can check that with the network utility. And then, of course, let's just go to google.com and see. There you go. We've got it rolling. Alrighty, so when getting to the point of needing to grab your graphics drivers, remember the web driver for NVIDIA that we downloaded earlier. It's going to be right here. There is native support for RX 460, 470, 480, as well as the 560, 570, and 580. That should be native. You'll have to make some changes for AMD. And then, like I said earlier, I couldn't get the 550 working. I'm going to be going over probably a separate, AMD how-to, but we're going to be focused on NVIDIA today. You're just going to go ahead and first, you're going to want to modify or make some changes with the Clover configurator. Once you open the Clover configurator, you can go down to Mount EFI. If you have two in here, Make sure you unplug the USB stick that you installed it with and go ahead and restart, and then make sure you only have the EFI that we created earlier with the multi-beast application. So once you've gotten this, you'll click Mount Partition, and then the next thing that we want to do is essentially go ahead and load in. We can actually just browse from here, I believe. So we can open partition. And we're going to want to go into Clover and open up our config.plst. And then the only change I had to make in this in particular was to come into the boot menu and uncheck NV_disable equals 1. And then you come down here and click the save button. Once that's complete, you're good to go through the WebDriver install, and it's a pretty basic installer and it shouldn't give you any issues. Let me know if you have any issues with it in the comment section below. Some websites say there's some other things you need to do. I did not experience that being any problem. And the problems that we had is we had applied everything, and I have a live stream up on my Twitch channel that I'll leave in the description below, and we had applied everything, but we applied it to this EFI, but we had the USB stick still plugged in, so it was booting with the other EFI off of the USB drive. So that other bootloader was running and causing pretty much, just running it at stock. And then once we resolved that, we loaded the default config.plist or plist, and then we modified just that by unchecking the disable NV right there. And once we did that, as you can see here, we had all of our drivers up. We can open the preferences here and go through, and as you can see, we found the 1050 Ti. I don't have a G-Sync panel. Funnily enough, I do have a FreeSync panel, so maybe we'll have to see if we can get that working. Now, if we go into About This Mac, and you can verify that it's working over here, you'll see that we have the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1050 Ti 4GB model. If you guys are interested in some of the benchmarks for this, we'll be working on that a little bit later. I did run a couple already. I will say that we were able to run the Heaven benchmark, and it runs pretty smooth. I did try to run a game as well that didn't run as smooth, and that game was Fortnite. Upon review, I found even the official Mac Pros are having issues, and they are not able to run it very well. We're getting the same issues, so it doesn't appear to be something that is specific to this Hackintosh itself. Everything else seems to be functioning quite well. We had some audio issues that right now going through the HDMI, but that seems to be related to my Elgato and not necessarily to the HDMI audio, because everybody that was hearing the audio on their end said it sounded good, but on my end, it wasn't sounding good at all. So just heads up on that. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do about that in the future. So as you can see here, we'll go into the benchmark for you guys. And down here in the right hand side, we're running this at the extreme 1080p. And we're staying around 30 FPS. Now, of course, in DirectX in Windows, the 1050 Ti does perform better than this to a certain extent. But, we're doing something a little bit different. If you want to watch me game on this particular device, I think we're going to do a gaming series over on twitch.tv/sonofatech_. Hope to see you over there. Alrighty, so that's going to wrap it up. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. I'm going to create a Hackintosh room over on my Discord, and you can find the link to that in the description below. Come chat about compatible hardware and what you guys have found in your research that you've done online that you haven't done, in real life or actually implemented. But whatever you Googled. I'll also leave some resources, of course, in the description below for you guys to go do your own research on compatible hardware and so on and so forth. This is becoming more and more relevant, especially when you start talking about the lack of upgradability in a Mac Pro. So a lot of the reason people are moving to doing this is primarily Apple's own failure at hardware support. It's really odd though, because I'm pretty sure it's the external GPU portion that's allowing this NVIDIA setup as opposed to what's native, the RX 460s, 560s, and 80s. Now that's native into the OS, but there's still some stuff you would have to do in Clover Configurator to get it really operating or functioning properly. But upgradability, OS X, and don't do it. See you next Tuesday.